Stories are a transportation device, and we all use that transportation device to paint a picture of a world that hasn't been created yet. Sometimes we paint a picture of a world that was, so that we can tell our customers and people how we have progressed and how much things have changed over a period of time. And what are we doing sitting here talking to each other? We are transporting each other into each other's lives in
Yes.
time and space. And that's what stories help us do. They just help us transport into different zones, different spaces, and different times.
So, guys, welcome to the WeTransform show, a show where we bring real life transformers and know their story, get inspired, and learn something from them. Today, our guest is Tanya Bhattacharya. Tanya is a wizard of stories. She has facilitation experience of more than 18 years. She has worked with two major corporations during her career as an L&D resource, managing sizable teams spread across India. She currently facilitates workshops and coaches people managers and individual contributors. She enables them to tell a better version of their work story, data story, product and service story, personal branding stories, and innovation pitch story. Wow. She believes that great stories happen to those who can tell them. She's committed to helping leaders inspire their teams by using authentic stories and captivating narratives. Tanya works very closely with not just corporates, but also with social sector organizations and startups. It's because she feels that everyone has a story to tell. This makes her a very important guest for our show because our show is all about telling the stories that inspire. Please welcome Tanya Bhattacharya. Tanya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alok. It's so good to be here. Thank you for inviting
Thanks
me.
a lot for joining, Tanya. And it's a very special day for me. I will tell you why. Because, I really wanted to invite you on this show when I was making my first list couple of weeks back to the people who should be on my show. And here is the reason. The reason is Tanya is the inspiration behind me creating videos on LinkedIn, guys. So this is how it happened when the lockdown happened, I guess, in the month of March. Tanya, you did some 11 days or 21 days storytelling thing. Every day used to come with a story. That was the first time I saw somebody coming into LinkedIn telling a story, which was very, very captivating and inspiring and giving a nice learning at the end. And she was doing it every other day. The best part, which I really loved about that phase of your storytelling, was it was different. And why? Because it had no introduction, it had no closing. You were never asking for people to follow, like, and share. You were just coming and telling the story, and tells a lot about you as a person. I felt this person is so passionate about stories. The whole video is about story. That was like my first, inspiration that I should create videos as well. So just to start, thank you so much, Tanya, for inspiring me to create videos because it made a lot of difference.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's very heartwarming to receive first-hand feedback. Of course, a lot of people wrote good things. They sometimes pinged that they were enjoying the stories. But I'm happy that I was instrumental in inspiring you, and I have seen the stories that you did on LinkedIn after that. And it's been a pleasure watching you do the good work that you do, Alok. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. In fact, yes, it is very mutual. We all get inspired by each other. But yeah, it started from watching you doing the stories, and I really saw different kind categories. There were stories from Middle East. There used to be stories of animals. There used to be I have to know a lot from you. But before I get to that section, I want to know from you. Let's get started with your story, Tanya. How your story started?
I guess it must have started when I was born, but of course, you barely remember things
Yeah.
of the past much. I think I've been very lucky in having parents and siblings and other extended family members who were all storytellers, extremely
Hmm.
animated storytellers. In fact, I remember growing up in a household where over the weekend, post dinner, family would gather together
Mm-hmm.
and in the living room, sitting on the floor, on mats, mattresses, on sofas, and just sharing a lot about their travel experiences. And you know how typical Indian households are? When one person tells a story, the other person has a similar story to tell.
Yes.
And we just have a slightly different flavoring to it.
Yes.
And as we call it typically in Hindi, milte julte kisse, which
Mm-hmm.
means similar sounding stories or narratives. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
kind of household that I've grown up in. So, and everything that people, would tell me about, how our childhood was. We would hear about our family members, extended families' childhood. So I think it's no surprise at all that I ended up becoming a storyteller over a period of time, but I still feel that it happened too late. I could have started way earlier, considering
Okay.
the beginning I had.
Wow, that's beautiful. In fact, we all somewhere have been a part of story, have been listening to stories in families. My family, I remember in early days, the stories were a lot around ghosts because they used to love it. Everybody had a ghost story to tell. Do not believe it. And I remember a phase of my life when everybody had one story. I said, how is it possible that everybody in my family has seen ghosts? Otherwise, what about other people? They don't talk about these stories often. So, it's like, again, milti julti kahaniyan keeps happening. You tell a story and people get another story which is very similar. So that's a very, very beautiful start. I guess, Tanya, you started as a trainer and a facilitator, and I think you have a very significant experience in facilitation. The facilitation has been very close to my heart because this is how I started 9 years back, from a sales job to facilitation. But yeah, so what has been that part, the training part to facilitation, and I want to know the transformation that you realize how stories would be your future.
So, because we are talking about transformations and the trigger points where things changed for us, I
Mm-hmm.
think even training happened quite incidentally. So, it
Okay.
wasn't part of the plan.
Hmm.
I started my career with the BPO industry and I was part of a sales process selling credit cards over the phone. But I wasn't very good at selling. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
I was much better at coaching my peers and the new people on the floor, per se,
Okay.
on how to sell without hitting very high sales myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the most intriguing part because I think I did coach well and I had completed about a year
Mm-hmm.
as an agent on calls.
Okay.
When I applied for an internal job posting, got selected, and was made the team leader for the nesting team, which is people who immediately come to the floor and they have to spend about 45 days to two
Mm-hmm.
months, like doing a tracking, buddying, and understanding the process better. And that's when I realized that I could do better when it came to explaining or deconstructing ideas and thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
but I was looking for an opportunity outside. I think I'd burnt enough bridges within the organization with the training team, with all the pushbacks that I did and all the complaints that I lodged. That you didn't cover this aspect in training, you should have done it. I don't think I had a scope or I would have been welcomed in the training team within the company.
Mm-hmm.
Is when I moved out and I joined a training firm. So essentially, it was 1 year plus 4, 5, or 6 months
Mm-hmm.
of on calls or on the shop floor kind of experience, and training happened afterwards. And I started enjoying it quite a bit. Of course, storytelling was a completely different ball game.
So I'll stop you here. I guess the first one, the first job which you started was with Wipro Spectra Mind, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something interesting because I started there from there as well. I was in Wipro Spectra Mind, and I joined in 2004. I guess that's the same time when you actually left and you went into a learning or training company, and then you came back as a team leader. So what happened after that? How you transitioned into facilitation after this?
So, because I joined a training company called Evolve,
Mm-hmm.
which later got taken over by NIIT,
Okay.
much later though. But my stint with Evolve was fascinating because it wasn't just one company that I was working with, because they were training providers, and they provided facilitators to different organizations. So I think I got an amazing kind of experience. In fact, I remember the first time I had to travel when I joined Evolve was to Bangalore, and incidentally, I live here now. I've been here 4 years, and my mom was completely against me traveling, and so far it was difficult enough for her to come to terms with me doing night shifts in a call center. And when I said I dropped the bomb, I have to travel to Bangalore for 2 months on an assignment, she lost it and she said, "You're not doing." But I think one person who's been extremely instrumental in propelling me forward and encouraging me to try new things, my dad. And he said, don't stop her at all. This is when she's going to live her life, she's going to experience, she's going to grow as a person. And he said, you should go have fun. He told me places to go shop. He told me about places where I could go drinking once I have friends in Bangalore.
Okay.
So that was an interesting bit. Yeah, got a lot of exposure because of that, and got thrown in straight facilitation. But we had very good, train the trainer program, and a very grilling one, in fact, for over a month or so. And every other day we had teach back sessions, and the CEO and the COO would sit for our teach back sessions. And I think once when you're planting a seed, and if you do good with that, and when as to how much shade and how much sun does it need, the plant that comes out is so much better. And I think that the same thing goes for us as professionals. If in the beginning, when we start to do something new, if we get that kind of nourishment and the right amount of sun and shade, being protected, cajoled, and mollycoddled, plus the harshness of it if you're not doing things right, that really sets the course for the future as to how good you turn out to be. And I owe a lot to our coaches and our master trainers who trained us.
Wow, fantastic. And then that's quite a learning. If you go through this kind of phase of learning, you really develop into a very finer person, and that really helps. So, if I may ask Tanya, because we're talking about transformations here, and you have been through different stages of your life, where from training to facilitation, then to storytelling, what has been the biggest moment of transformation for you?
So, interestingly, the biggest moment of transformation for me wasn't so much in my career, but a little before that. And this is the time when I wrote my 12th board exams, and I think English was my last paper, and I asked my dad for 100 bucks, and I said, "Can you give me 100 rupees, because there was a plan of all the friends hanging out in one of the fast food joints in Noida to go have burgers, Pepsi or something." And 100 bucks was ample back then, almost 23 years ago. And my dad said, "You think that money grows on trees and you just spat out, give me 100 bucks and I should give it to you?" And I think I was deeply offended when he offered 50 bucks to me. I didn't take it. I said, "I don't need your money. You can keep your money to yourself." And I was very, very egoistic, full of pride, self-respect, whatever you want to call it. The exam got over. My friends insisted that I go out with them. They're the ones who funded my burger. I got it into my head that I'm going to work, because I realized that people working in a fast food joint were as old as I was back then. So I tried my luck, and I did get a job. And so I actually closed an interview right there. I spoke to the manager. He interviewed me. He said, but you're still too young. Go home, take permission. You're still in your school uniform. Don't you want to enjoy your time after your board exams?" And I said, "No, I want to earn. I want to show to my dad that I can earn money." I went back home. Dad obviously wasn't back from work yet. I went back to the place in a Delhi Transport Corporation bus, the DTC bus, with my sister. Manager again. I said, "I got my mother's blessings that I can do this. So let me do this for a month." That was the plan, to just do it for a month. I think what happened was absolutely brilliant, because in that 1 month I've scrubbed the machinery. I managed the till. I learned for the first time ever in my life how to chop vegetables finely. The julienne and the dice and how to mix ketchup and all of that, and traveling in buses, which I hadn't done before.
Hmm.
School is very different from a local bus. I
Yes.
think the economic equalizer that it was, where we were so used to being served as customers. My dad was a Rotarian, so when you're a member of the Rotary Club, you're going to the finest hotels for dinners and
Hmm.
parties, etc. We were so used to being served. I had never imagined I would be working at a counter and serving people, and
Hmm.
like a bus cleaning tables. And I did that for an entire month. I think what I learned was a lesson in humility,
Hmm.
and I think that's where the transformation began. That no job is too small because
Yes.
everyone works tremendously hard to
Yeah.
earn their living. So
So
I think that was an eye opener for me.
that is incredible. I guess, Tanya, takes a lot of courage to do something like this as well, because we all have those moments where we get a little shock in our life, and I really give credit to your father as well, who made this moment in your life in some way when he said, "No, why 100 rupees?" Because that shock is needed sometimes, and we all get that. Some accept the challenge, some do not accept the challenge, and it's very easy to feel bad about it. Yaar, ye kya, mere papa to kanjoos hai, he does not give me any money. We can think like that as well, right? But choosing that option, going all the way, doing it is power. And you did it very early in your life. That's how you see success coming in some sort, and you understand that I can do it. These things are like absolutely possible. So I'll let me kind of and this is something I really wanted to ask you, Tanya, because I know a lot of storytellers, and I'm coming to the subject right now. The storytelling subject. We all understand stories are important, and we have been listening to that. But when I was kind of reading your introduction in the LinkedIn and different places, you do so much variety of work, like work storytelling, data stories, product, and all of these varieties. So it's very detailed. It's much more than just stories. So let me ask you, a storyteller, why stories?
Why stories? Because stories are the soul of everything that we do, that we exist for. Even the purpose that we have in our life is a story that we tell ourselves. When we
Hmm.
follow someone else's vision, it's somebody else's story that we buy into, and we get carried away with their purpose in life. It could be one leader, it could be the goal or the vision of an organization that we attach ourselves to, but everything exists because of stories. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's the person who tells the better story who wins, because everybody could be doing phenomenal amount of work and
Hmm.
really good work, which may be very similar to the other,
Yeah.
but still one person stands out more than the other, because that one person may just have mastered the art of saying what they say a little differently, and
Hmm.
in a way that it connects people, that it makes them unforgettable,
Yeah.
and they can be so awe inspiring.
Hmm.
So that's why stories.
Wow, that's amazing. I think a very new way to look into the story side of it. And I think a lot of people will learn from this video about that whole curiosity about why stories, because, lately storytelling is really getting that light which it was needing. It was not that popular as a keyword, but yes, we can see storytellers, the companies are built on storytelling, and that all is happening. But let me ask you, in a work life scenario, there are moments where you have to present data. You have to go with numbers, especially in a sales scenario. I've been into sales for many years, and I still have to kind of tell myself, how would I tell a story when I have to give a data point? So, how do you do that? As in, how is it done?
So, of course, it's a full fledged program that you might have to attend to learn all the
Okay.
tricks of the trade. But
Okay.
But to let you know the secret, the whole concept of data story is that, when you look at just numbers in isolation, numbers never contextualize anything. A
Hmm.
number stands alone, it's raw, and it's unappealing. But a number becomes meaningful when there is a context that the number is placed in. Typically, when we have a chart that we put up for people to see and we
Mm-hmm.
highlight a certain number circle it or we highlight it in red, green, or yellow, or any other color that takes our fancy outside of these three. We want to draw people's attention,
Mhm.
and a lot of times people still lose the thread of why this number is where it is,
Mhm.
what happened to make it possible, or who does this number represent, who are the people who this number represents. So sometimes we miss out on talking about what that number is representative of and
Yep.
what this means for us. How do we use this number or take an insight from it to take decisions in
Mhm.
the future? Because when we share data with with the thought in mind that we want to inspire action or we want to
Yes.
nudge people to take a
Correct. Yeah.
decision. And we don't make it possible to just put numbers on the screen without really contextualizing. So, data
Mhm.
storytelling has aspects of how we wrap the data into a story or uncover the story which is hidden inside the number itself. Plus,
Mhm.
how can you use different visualization techniques so that
Okay.
it can be seen, it
More
can be
graphic.
felt, and it can be
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Very true. I guess now I can see where it is coming from and what it means because it happened with me. I went to a couple of months back, maybe a year back. I was supposed to give a presentation to a very large travel company about facilitation and team engagement and all. So I went there, all prepared, and there was a big boardroom. It was post lunch meeting at around 2:30, 3 o'clock, and they pulled in quite some people, like 10 of the representatives were there in the room, and we started with the candid conversation. And I said, okay, I'll show you some slides about what we do. And I started, so just to get the clarity of the slide deck, they turned off few lights in the room, and I started with how many years we are in business and how many cities we serve and stuff like that. It was just 30 seconds to 45 seconds of my speaking, and I turned back to the audience and I saw five faces with eyes closed. Five of them already
Mm.
were about to sleep. And I like, oh my God, I don't want to say any further. The way I'm kind of proceeding, it is really deadly because they won't be even listening to me. So I use experiential learning. I said, okay, guys, lights on, slides off, let's get up and do some action. So I used my experiential learning stuff to get that started. And we started with a story. We can give a scenario that imagine your guests from the inbound guests from some different country as going to a city. They want to see the city, but in a different way. We can do it. We can gamify that city sightseeing. Oh, we have an inquiry. Then things changed when the context came in, and the data slides were out of the show. So it's great help, I guess, using stories to tell that.
Something that you said, which is very, very important and relevant here, is look, a lot of times we keep harping about the my story and the I story.
Hmm.
And that happens in sales conversations for when you have to acquire a new client or we
Yes.
have to upsell to a new client. And we go all out with our own glorified stories of my story, what
Yeah.
I do, what my company does, what my people do. And we are just so wrapped up in ourselves that we don't see beyond as to who's sitting opposite me and how does my world
Hmm.
merge with theirs. What is it that I do or provide which might be of help or need to the others? And which is where storytelling helps because if done right, you can embrace the other person, bring them into the fold.
Yeah.
And you say that, my story of will fit right in. But let me
Exactly.
first understand or tell you how I've been able to understand the context of your worldview. And for that, understanding their worldview, telling them the story of what you know of their
Hmm.
life and their world is important. And then easing into your own story. So there are, of course, just like a good paragraph or a good novel or a good movie, there's a start, there's a middle, and there's a finish. Even for a business story, how do you start? How do you package your story in the middle? And how do you end? There's, of course, a structure because frameworks and structures always make it easy,
Yes.
palpable, digestible.
Yes.
So those become very important.
And no wonder why your stories look so captivating, because I guess you use those structures when you tell the stories, and it's very very important for all of us to learn that. And I guess if there are salespeople who are listening to this conversation, I must tell you, I've spent significant amount of times doing sales, guys. There are 4 or 5 slides in the beginning which are all about data points. Please don't do that. Please bring the audience to your worldview, as Tanya just suggested, then set the context, and then tell about your features. Of course, you share your features and benefits, but not in the beginning. That'll not get you the what you're looking for, definitely. So Tanya, when did you realize that you're cut out for training and facilitation or storytelling? When did this realization came to you?
It started way back in time. I must have been, what, 6 or 7 years old, and
Mhm.
I figured I wanted to be a teacher. I had an imaginary class that would be in progress once I would get back home. I used to have a portable blackboard, the one at the back with the wooden. Holders or whatever, so that there was a portable blackboard that I would drag and put in the dining room, because that was one place where there was a lot of space. And I
Mm-hmm.
would roll out a colored mat, the woven mat, which is typically called a chatai in Hindi.
Mm-hmm.
So a colored beautiful mat we had that I would spread out, and I had my colored chalks and a duster, and I would just go on teaching a class. And of course, I don't have a recollection of all this. These are memories that my mother has shared with me. And
Okay.
she told me, I grew up, that one day my class was in progress and I was teaching my class with so much of deep interest. And I was mid sentence when my mother had to run across that mat to go into the kitchen to switch off the gas. I think there
Okay.
was a right milk on the gas which had to promptly be closed, had to be switched off. And while she turned off the gas, I was in shock and I was deeply hurt that she would trample over my kids. And I screamed at her and I howled, and she said, "What happened?" I was inconsolable. Finally, in between my hiccups, I got it out and I said, you trampled my kids. And I said it in Hindi, and I said, "Aapne mere bacche kuchal diye,"
Oh my
which means that
God.
you've trampled my kids. They are squashed to pulp. That's what I wanted to say. And she said, "Which kids?" I said, "My class was going on." And she laughed, and that hurt me even more, that she thought it was funny. I didn't
Yeah.
speak to her all. But after that, she never made that mistake, and everybody started respecting my boundaries and my class, so they wouldn't disturb me. But I think I knew it very early in life that I think I wanted to be a teacher. But maybe it was a profession that everybody dreamt of when we were
Hmm.
kids, because we didn't have the awareness, right? We didn't have Disney to fill our heads with, with so many other
Yeah.
opportunities which present themselves for children now. My daughter has already thought of 3 4 different professions that she wants to get into.
Seriously.
But yeah.
Wow, wow. This is really a very early start, and great you identified that, that love which started very early should be carried forward. And I'm so happy that you're doing that. Tanya, there's so many things which you have done, and about stories, about you switch over from completely from facilitations. So how did that transition happen? Because for many years, and I was looking through your LinkedIn profile actually yesterday. So I saw many years you spent in facilitation, which was about training and facilitation. So when did the first entrance of storytelling came into your life?
My paths crossed Ameens, who's the founder of Storywalas, the company that I work with now. So I had just finished a half day workshop at a leading IT company, which has their R&D center in Hyderabad.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was doing a workshop here in Bangalore for them. They have an office. They had an office on Lavelle Road. Now they've moved.
Okay.
But I finished my program there in before lunch, and I was terribly hungry. I wanted to eat something before I headed off. Bangalore traffic is, of course, very unpopular. You could be stuck for hours. So while I was grabbing lunch with my participants, I saw that the multipurpose halls were being opened up. So one of the rooms where I was training was there were lots of hundreds of chairs which were being put, and I asked my my participants that I was having lunch with as to what's going on. Is there an event taking place? They said Amin Haq is coming.
Okay.
I said, who's Amin? Like a celebrity, am I supposed to know him? They said he's a storyteller, a business storyteller. He's coming for a keynote session today.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was supposed to address so many people. And I'm one of those, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Alok, that as facilitators, we don't really get visibility to what others are doing unless
Yes.
invited, or
True.
you pay for it. And
Exactly.
those open sessions also don't happen so frequently. Now they're happening much more because of the virtual setup.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always intriguing to see what is it that other people are doing, which is interesting, fun. It refreshes things for you, right?
Yep.
So I asked them if I could just, now that I was at the venue anyway, they said, yeah, just come sit. And I'm one of those people who just doesn't take something for free. I say, if you're giving it to me for free, give me two. So I went and I sat. So I took the front row seat and I
Okay.
made eye contact with while he was talking, and I attended that 90-minute session. It was super good. The lady from HR who was also present there introduced us. We exchanged numbers. But when I heard him, when I saw what he did, and in that
Mm-hmm.
90 minutes, I supremely captivated, and it was so much fun. And I said to myself, this is good and I want to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And incidentally, because we had been introduced, and the lady from HR spoke good things about me to Amin, because I'd been working for over 4 years for that client
Okay.
until then, and doing a lot of workshops. So there was good feedback that
Mm-hmm.
followed. I think there is also something very interesting about the way that we met. When you meet someone at a wine dinner, or you meet someone at someone else's social do, you
Yeah.
still don't really know how people are professionally, because you're
Yes.
meeting them in a social setting. I think what worked really for us was the fact that we met in a professional setup. The
Mm-hmm.
client had good things to say. I mean, wanted to explore if we, synergy, if we could work together, and we tried to match our calendars. Struggled for a few months, just couldn't see each other's work after that. But we did make it happen eventually. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that taster that I got of what he did and the
Mm-hmm.
magic that storytelling could create, it stayed with me, and we kept trying and attempting to see each
Mm-hmm.
other's work, to see if we could work together. And we did eventually. I've just completed 2 years with Storywala. So of course, there's a lot of water which has flown under the, gone under the bridge by now. But it's been a tremendous journey, and I think I have done work, Alok, that I wouldn't have done otherwise. Like,
Wow.
I don't see myself being, doing a lot of social sector work. But I do that now, and helping people tell their impact stories, to talk about their beneficiary stories, their volunteer stories. And I think that brings a lot of satisfaction, when you work with the United Nations volunteers,
And service.
with organizations. Absolutely. So there are some really good work which is being done, the impact work,
Mm-hmm.
and I thoroughly enjoy that.
Wow.
And I don't think I would have done it otherwise had I just.
And that's the beauty of life. It brings you in front of situations which are meant to change your ways and pivot your lifestyle completely. So that one incident that you noticed why this conference is happening, and you had the curiosity to ask who is coming, all that mattered to you, bring you into this world. That's amazing. This is incredible work. So let me ask you my next question, which is around, I really want to know now, that what are you doing now? How are you serving people? And what are some of your dreams and aspirations, Tanya?
Oh, okay. What I'm doing now, largely three areas of work. One is,
Mm-hmm.
of course, impact storytelling. So, working closely with social sector organizations and helping them tell the better version of their stories, because they have to raise funds and donations.
Okay.
I do a lot of work with, of course, corporates, working very closely with leaders.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of one-to-one coaching that happens, because it's one thing to be part of a workshop or an online course, like a virtual course, the way that we are delivering it now in this
Mm-hmm.
model. So people end up doing a lot of group work and individual work. And yet, when it comes to delivering a good story or being inspiring, it takes some effort and some fine tuning. And each one of us have our own unique ticks, and our own unique ways which could be honed, polished. And which is why, so there's a lot of that happening. So while corporate storytelling continues in, storytelling for helping leaders become inspiring leaders. And the third kind of work that I'm doing is in the startup space and innovation space. So we have a lot of clients who have great innovations. They want to, like in Shark Tank like events.
Yeah.
They want people who are innovators to be able to present their story better. So we do a short workshop and then help them with their stories and to get their pitch decks right. Because they have to seek investment from the organization and backing their idea. There's also startups that we work with and help founders and co-founders get their pitch story right. And I love performance storytelling. There haven't been as many opportunities though, Alok, which is why I used LinkedIn as a platform to tell those Zen stories and Sufi stories and connect them to life and key takeaways. I enjoy performance storytelling as well for grown-ups and adults. And I used to do that to some extent earlier because Bangalore has a lovely storytelling scene.
Okay.
Not as much now, but that's something that I want to do more of because you asked about my aspiration. That's one space that I want to do more work once the
Wow,
world opens.
wonderful. Yeah, of course. And so, have you been to open mics as well, doing storytelling? Because I think there are a lot of open mics in Bangalore as well.
No, not that. I don't think I have the confidence or the courage for it.
Okay.
So, for all the facilitation experience and confidence of running a workshop or telling stories in an intimate setting to people where it's a pre designated event and I am probably the only storyteller there, it's fine. But this is too much pressure, open mic night. I'm not cut out for that. I'm too shy for that.
Okay, okay. Interesting. Very contrast kind of career you have because you have to speak up, of course, for the workshops and all. Because why I'm asking because I went to a couple of open mics for my poetry. I write some poems, and I saw some storytellers there as well in Gurgaon before coronavirus, of course.
So how is
So
that experience for you, Alok? Do you feel any kind of pressure when you're at an open mic night? How has that experience been for you?
yeah, so I guess for the open mics, there are two kind of compositions I normally share. One that has been with me for like 20 years now. Now I remember those poems in back of my mind. So I know that the content I don't need to refer anything. I don't need a paper in my hand, and I'm very relaxed when I'm kind of sharing that. It's completely from my heart. If it is a new composition, if it is something very very newly created, and I need to refer, I feel it a little uncomfortable. I'm not in my complete elements at that point of time. If you ask me, I don't want to see a script at all when I'm speaking. Most of my videos, which I do, I don't write a script. And those where I've written a script, I've messed up. Nobody knows about it because I, of course, edit it and then redo it and all of that. But I do a lot of takes when I write it down. But if I just noted some points, I've thought about it for a day and I am all on my own, I'm free to speak, works for me. So yeah, so I have a kind of a mix of experience for open mics. But the best part about open
Interesting.
mic is that and the best part about stage is that the setups are normally I have been to have been quite well lit, so the light is on you and the audience is in dark. So all you see is darkness in front of you. You feel like you're talking to something like a mirror and makes it easier.
Of
Yeah.
course, I hear you. Yeah, so you don't feel too unsettled and conscious then.
Correct. Also, one thing I feel, Tanya, because I started stage very early in my life because I was doing theater and different things, and I learned from a guru about this whole side of being on stage. That till the time you feel that you will be judged, you will feel uncomfortable. Why? Because you will start comparing about the person who just came in before you, or somebody who's going to be after you, how they performed and all. However, what we communicate is mostly with humans, and they like original people. They like the way you are, the way you speak. The moment we reach that point and that we're speaking, by our own, completely free and bindas, people love it. You just don't need to prepare also. It's like it goes like that. A little bit that works for me.
You're so right about that, Alok. It's like a gem that you have just shared. The fact that I think we are so consumed with ourselves and extremely and utterly self-conscious. But people love originality and our original voices. I think the day that we start mimicking each other and become clones of each other, it's going to be so dull and boring.
Yes. Yes.
So, interesting. Yes, absolutely. So contrast helps. So it's good if you are different from the previous speaker.
Yes, in fact, I was listening to Ankur Bariko video one day, and he was speaking for something, and this word vulnerability came, and he messed up that word 5 times, vulnerable, something like that. It is a difficult word to say, and nobody edited that part. People laughed at it. It's real, it's original. We all do that. There are some. I hate viscosity and vulnerability. I never say it correctly in one go. So just be there. Just be as vulnerable as possible. It's okay. That works, I guess. So great. So
I
this is
think
like an yeah.
no, I was just saying it's interesting that you mentioned Ankur. I can't say his last name correctly ever. Is it Variku?
Wariku. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen his videos way back, and he used to post these short snippets, experiences, extremely inspiring as a speaker. Because you mentioned that maybe my stories inspired you. There's one person whose short snippets I loved to watch. That was Ankur's, and then of course he stopped featuring on LinkedIn altogether. I saw him pop up recently. Now I think there is some online learning platform where he's showing up again. But it's interesting how there are some people who have a very unique way of speaking,
Yeah.
and they're so passionate about what they speak, and it's not made up. It's not painted, polished, and made up.
Right.
That it speaks to your soul. I really enjoy watching his video. Fantastic speaker he is.
Of course, he is indeed. He must be getting hiccups right now. I'll tag him in my post that we spoke about you. So great. So this is a wonderful conversation, Tanya, and you've been very very open and candid in sharing your story. But you know what? I should not let you go without listening a story from you. Maybe a Zen, maybe a Sufi. I don't know, but we should end this session with a small story that has been the most inspiring story personally for you in your from your library of stories.
So there is one story that I have enjoyed a lot telling. I think if there are people who have attended my workshops, many of them would connect with this story because I would have ended practically 80% of my workshops with this story, and I would love to tell that. Because I don't think I've told that enough in the virtual space. It's so
Mm-hmm.
much better when I do it live. And it's one story which is my soul story. And I
Mm-hmm.
truly believe that there are some stories which are meant for you and they speak to your soul. So this is my soul story that I'm going to share with you now. And it's a Zen story. And
Okay.
I heard it many, many years ago. So once there was a Zen master who was about 82 years old. He lived in a monastery full of middle aged, young, and some little monks. And in this monastery, which was atop a hill, there was a little monk who was about 7 years old. Now, this little monk was as notorious, as naughty as
Mm-hmm.
little monks are. So, when in the morning the session would be on, the learning session of question and answers, deliberating about the meaning of life, relationship, etc., and everybody would be gathered around the Zen master, listening to him and asking him questions. This little monk was very interested in running after that squirrel that would have a nut in its mouth and would be looking for a crevice to go and deposit it. He wanted to catch the cat that would climb over the wall then into the tree and and just disappear. He was more interested in catching the birds that would have flown into the foyer where the seeds would have been strewn in the morning. and he would barely ever sit down. So all the other monks would keep calling out to this little monk and saying, "Little monk, don't do that. Little monk, don't do that. Little monk, sit down. Little monk, yes, no, little monk, little monk." Now the little monk had had enough, and he thought to himself, "Yes, I am little, but I am as much a monk as everybody else. I have shaved my head and I'm wearing this orange robe. And people have to just stop fussing over me as much. And I need to gain their respect." The only way he knew how to gain their respect was to show that he was as smart as the Zen master, if not smarter. But
Okay.
wouldn't it be better if he just outsmart the Zen master? So he sat down to devise a plan. Took him about a week, and he had a foolproof plan made. The
Okay.
plan was the plan was to get a bird and hide it behind him when the session would be in progress. And he was going to ask the Zen master a question for which the Zen master would have to give the right answer. The question would be that, "Zen master, I have a bird in my hands that I'm hiding behind me. And please do tell, is the bird dead or alive?" And if the Zen master said that the bird was dead, then he would make the bird fly in all its glory. And if the Zen master said that the bird were alive, then he would wring the bird's neck and show the dead bird. One way or another, the Zen master would not be able to give the right answer. The plan was made. So very excitedly, he ran down 108 steps from the monastery down the hill to the nearest village, found a beautiful white dove, hid it in the folds of his robe, and he climbed up 108 steps, huffing and puffing, went straight into his room and hid the bird under the bed and covered it with a really big sheet, ran to the kitchen, got a small bowl of seeds and a small bowl of water, shoved it under the bed and locked the room so that nobody discovers the bird. All day he did his chores as asked. He read his scriptures, he wrote stuff down, he chanted. Everything that he had to do, he did flawlessly that day. At night, he could barely sleep with excitement. He tossed and turned, just imagining the faces of all the monks when he outsmarts the Zen master. He could barely wait. First light in the morning, the little monk was awake, took his bath, wore a fresh robe, and he sat down for the morning lesson. But the lesson had barely started when he slipped away. People were very used to him slipping away, so nobody took notice. But when he came back, he stood right at the back against the pillar with his hands at the back, and he wouldn't move a muscle. Now, all the monks sitting and gathered around the Zen master were supremely distracted. They kept looking back at him and then, again at the Zen master. The Zen master realized that today the lesson would not be able to go on without a hitch because everybody was distracted by the little monk. So he called out to the little monk. He said, "Well, little monk, do you have a question to ask or something to say? Because it seems like you have something on your mind." This is exactly the moment that little monk was waiting for. So his hands still. He took 2 steps forward and he asked the monk with as much pride as he could. And he said, "Well, Zen master, I have a bird in my hands. Do tell, is it dead or alive?" And then he waited. The Zen master didn't say a word. He smiled and he kept looking at this little monk tenderly. Now, the little monk got a little confused. He thought to himself, "Is the Zen master on to me? Does he know that I have a bird in my hand that's alive? Maybe somebody's seen it. No, I'm overthinking it." He put his chin up again, his chest out, and asked again, "Well, Zen master, do tell, is the bird dead or alive?" The Zen master looked at him kindly. He smiled and he said, "Well, little monk, what's in your hands is in your hands."
Wow.
What do you think this
That
means? What's in your hands is in your hands.
It means that it's in your hand and it's completely up to you what you do about it, right?
Absolutely. Our lives too are in our hands. What we do with every opportunity that comes to us, whether we kill it or we fly away with it, depends
Yes.
on us.
Such a beautiful, amazing, Tanya. I think this is an incredible story. Yes, we all have opportunities in our hands. We kill it or we make it fly is always a choice. And with everything else, there's always a choice which we have. Thank you for sharing this story and thank you for sharing your story. It is truly inspiring. I hope somebody definitely learns from your story today. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was lovely having you on the show. Right.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I wish you all the best, Alok. May you keep spreading the joy and magic by meeting more transformers, bringing people onto your show. It's been such a delight to see your work. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for joining, Tanya. Thank you.